Admiral Cathris stood on the bridge of the massive warship called Eternal Dominion. His red eyes looked out at the stars through the wide windows. For 3,000 years, his people had ruled over 800 star systems. They were called the Valorian Empire, and no one dared to fight them. The bridge was filled with officers wearing black uniforms. They watched their computer screens and reported to the Admiral. Today was just another normal patrol of the outer space areas. Nothing exciting ever happened here anymore. All the other alien races knew better than to challenge the Valorians. "Admiral, we are approaching the border systems," said Lieutenant Vextar, his voice filled with the usual boredom. "All is quiet in this sector." Cathris nodded. He'd been doing these patrols for 40 years. The same route, the same empty space, the same fear from the local planets when they saw his ships coming. Sometimes he missed the old days when there were still wars to fight. Now everyone just paid their tribute and stayed quiet. The Eternal Dominion was 2 miles long and could destroy entire cities with one shot. Behind it followed 12 other warships, each one capable of taking over a small planet. Their plasma cannons could melt through any armor, and their energy shields could stop any weapon the Empire had ever faced. "Sir, we are receiving tribute reports from the mining worlds," another officer said. "All payments are on time. The humans on Kepler 442b have delivered their monthly quota of rare metals." The Admiral barely listened. Humans were just another slave race. Nothing special about them. They had been discovered 20 years ago on some distant planet and were now used for mining work on 12 different worlds. They were weak and small, but they worked hard when properly motivated. Emperor Zethkar ruled the Empire from his golden palace on Valorian Prime. He was old and powerful, and his word was law across hundreds of worlds. The Emperor believed that the Valorians were meant to rule over all other life in the galaxy. It was their destiny, their right. "Admiral," the sensor officer suddenly shouted, "I am detecting something impossible." Cathris turned quickly. In 40 years of service, he had never heard panic in that officer's voice. "What is it?" "Sir, there is a massive energy reading appearing from empty space. Something very large is coming out of nothing." The main screen flickered and then showed what looked like empty space. But the sensors were going crazy. Energy readings were off the charts, higher than anything they had ever seen. "That cannot be right. Check your equipment," Cathris ordered. "Sir, all systems are working perfectly. Something is definitely there." Suddenly, the space in front of them began to ripple like water. The stars seemed to bend and twist. Then, without any warning, a ship appeared. It was huge, even bigger than the Eternal Dominion. Its hull was dark gray with strange patterns carved into the metal. The design was like nothing any of them had ever seen. The bridge fell silent. Every officer stared at the screen with wide eyes. In 3,000 years, no unknown ship had ever appeared in Valorian space. It was impossible. They knew about every race, every planet, every ship in this part of the galaxy. "What is that?" whispered Lieutenant Vextar. The strange ship just floated there, silent and still. Its hull had writing on it in symbols that their computers could not read. The design was sleek, but also looked very dangerous. It had no visible weapons, but somehow it felt more threatening than any warship they had ever seen. "All ships, battle stations," Cathris commanded. "Raise shields and charge weapons." The 12 escort ships quickly moved into attack formation around the Eternal Dominion. Red lights flashed throughout the bridge as the crew prepared for battle. But the unknown ship did not move or react in any way. Then, something came through their communication systems. A voice speaking in perfect Valorian language, but with a strange accent they had never heard before. "This is Captain Sarah Chun of the Terran Federation Navy. You have entered Earth's territorial space without permission. You have 30 seconds to withdraw from this area, or we will consider your presence an act of war." The bridge erupted in confused voices. Earth? Terran Federation? They had never heard these words before. Their computers showed no records of any race called Terrans or any planet called Earth. "Sir, our databases show no information about any Terran Federation," the intelligence officer reported. "There is no record of Earth in any of our star charts." Kethris felt anger rising in his chest. How dare this unknown ship give orders to the mighty Valorian Empire? "Open a channel," he commanded. The main screen changed to show the interior of the alien ship. A human woman sat in a captain's chair, looking directly at them. She was small and had brown hair, just like the human slaves on the mining worlds. But something was very different about her. Her eyes showed no fear, no respect for the superior Valorian race. Instead, she looked at them like they were the ones who should be afraid. "I am Admiral Kethris of the Valorian Empire," he said with all his authority. "You will surrender your vessel immediately. This entire sector belongs to the Empire. You are the ones who are trespassing here." The human captain did not even blink. "Admiral, you are mistaken. This star system belongs to the Terran Federation. Your ships have crossed into our space without permission. You will leave now." Kethris laughed, and his officers joined him. A human giving orders to Valorians. It was the most ridiculous thing he had ever heard. Humans were slaves, nothing more. They dug in mines and served their Valorian masters. The idea of humans having their own space navy was like insects demanding respect from giants. "You amuse me, human, but your joke has gone too far. Prepare to be boarded. Your ship will make an interesting addition to our fleet." The human captain's expression did not change. "Admiral, I tried to give you a chance. Your 30 seconds are up." The communication ended, and the main screen returned to showing the dark ship floating in space. Kethris smiled. Time to teach these humans their place in the galaxy. "All ships, open fire. Disable their engines, but try not to destroy the vessel. The Emperor will want to study their technology." But as the Valorian ships prepared to attack, Admiral Kethris did not know that his empire was about to face something it had never encountered before. Something that had been watching them for a very long time. Something that was ready. The plasma cannons of 13 Valorian warships charged with deadly energy. Admiral Kethris watched his weapons officer prepare the attack. These cannons could melt through the strongest armor known in the galaxy. No ship had ever survived a direct hit from even one of them, and now 13 ships were about to fire at once. "All ships report ready, Admiral," said the weapons officer. "Targeting the human vessel's engine section." Kethris nodded. Fire. Bright blue beams of superheated plasma shot across space toward the dark human ship. The energy was so intense that it lit up the surrounding area like a small sun. Any normal vessel would have been torn apart instantly. The Admiral expected to see pieces of metal flying everywhere and maybe a few escape pods trying to flee. Instead, something impossible happened. The plasma beams hit the human ship and simply disappeared. They did not bounce off or create explosions. They just vanished into the dark hull as if the ship was eating the energy. What just happened? Kethris demanded. The weapons officer stared at his controls in confusion. "Sir, all weapons fired correctly. Direct hits on target. But there is no damage. The plasma just went away." On the main screen, the human ship remained perfectly still. Its hull showed no burn marks, no damage at all. It looked exactly the same as before the attack. This was impossible. Nothing could absorb that much plasma energy without any sign of damage. "Fire again. All ships, full power." Kethris shouted. Another wave of plasma beams shot toward the human vessel. This time, the Valorians used maximum power, enough energy to destroy a city. Again, the beams simply disappeared into the dark hull. The ship did not even move from the impact. Then the human ship finally responded, but not with plasma cannons or energy weapons like the Valorians expected. Instead, small ports opened along its hull and something very different came out. Incoming projectiles. The sensor officer yelled. But they are not energy weapons. They appeared to be metal slugs? The admiral stared at the screen. Metal slugs? What kind of primitive weapon was that? It was like throwing rocks at a mountain. Ray shields. Those ancient projectiles cannot possibly hurt us. But these were not ordinary metal slugs. As they flew through space, the sensors showed they were moving at incredible speed. 15% of light speed. Nothing could move that fast and still be solid matter. It broke every law of physics the Valorians knew. The first projectile hit the escort ship called Crimson Spear. The Valorian energy shields that could stop any plasma weapon simply did not work. The metal slug passed through the shield like it was not even there and struck the hull. The sound that came through the communication channel was unlike anything Admiral Kethris had ever heard. A deep, tearing noise as the projectile ripped through the Crimson Spear from front to back. The massive warship was 2/3 of a mile long, with armor thick enough to stop nuclear weapons. The human slug went through all of it in less than a second. Atmosphere and debris shot out from both sides of the ship as it began to break apart. Red lights flashed across its hull as emergency systems tried to deal with the catastrophic damage. But it was already too late. The Crimson Spear was dying. How was this possible? Lieutenant Vextar whispered Dot before anyone could answer. More slugs hit other ships. Each impact was devastating. The energy shields that had protected Valorian vessels for thousands of years were useless. The advanced armor that could withstand nuclear blasts was torn apart like paper. The escort ship, Golden Thunder, took a hit to its engine section. The projectile caused a chain reaction that destroyed the entire rear half of the vessel. The ship Battle Pride was struck in its weapons area, and all its plasma cannons exploded at once, creating a bright flash that could be seen from light years away. In less than 2 minutes. 7 of the 12 escort ships were either destroyed or badly damaged. The surviving crews were sending desperate emergency signals and trying to escape in their small shuttlecraft. Return fire. Keep firing, Kethris ordered, but his voice now showed fear instead of confidence. The remaining ships continued to shoot their plasma weapons at the human vessel, but every beam still disappeared into its hull without causing any damage. It was like trying to hurt a mountain by throwing water at it. Then the human ship spoke again. Captain Sarah Chan's voice came through their communication systems, calm and steady as if nothing had happened. Admiral Kethris, this is your final warning. Withdraw your ships immediately or they will all be destroyed. The Admiral looked around his bridge. Half of his powerful fleet was gone or dying. His remaining ships were badly damaged and their crews were panicking. But his pride would not let him surrender to humans. Humans were supposed to be slaves. Never, he shouted back. The Valorian Empire does not surrender to inferior races. All ships ramming speed. We will destroy them with our ships themselves. It was a desperate move. If their weapons could not hurt the human vessel, perhaps crashing into it would work. The remaining Valorian ships turned and accelerated toward the human warship at maximum speed. But Captain Chun had been expecting this. More ports opened on her ship's hull, and this time hundreds of projectiles shot out. Each one found its target with perfect accuracy. The Valorian ships were torn apart before they could get close enough to ram the human vessel. The Eternal Dominion, the Admiral's flagship, was the last ship left. Kethris stood on his bridge watching his entire fleet die around him. In 40 years of military service, he had never seen such complete destruction. The mighty Valorian navy, which had conquered hundreds of worlds, was being destroyed by a single human ship. "Sir, hull breaches on decks 12 through 15. We are losing atmosphere fast," reported the damage control officer. Another human projectile had struck them, but not a killing blow. The slug had torn through several sections of the ship, but missed the main engines and the bridge. They were badly damaged, but still alive. "This is Captain Chun," the human voice said again. "Admiral, I am giving you one chance to survive. Surrender now, and your remaining crew will be allowed to leave in escape pods. Continue fighting, and you will all die." Kethris looked around his bridge. Most of his officers were dead or wounded. Emergency lights flashed red in the smoke-filled air. His great flagship was dying around him. For the first time in his life, a Valorian admiral was forced to speak words that no one in the Empire thought they would ever hear. We surrender." The human ship stopped firing. Captain Chun's face appeared on the main screen again, and now Admiral Kethris could see something in her eyes that terrified him more than the destruction of his fleet. It was not anger or hatred. It was disappointment, as if she had expected better from them. "Admiral, you will return to your empire with a message. Tell Emperor Zethkar that humanity has been watching. We know about the slave raids, the tribute fleets, and the conquered worlds. Your empire's crimes have not gone unnoticed. This is your only warning. The age of Valorian domination is over." As the escape pods launched from the dying Eternal Dominion, carrying the few surviving crew members back toward Valorian space, Admiral Kethris realized that everything had changed. The Empire had just encountered something they had never faced before, a force that was stronger than they were, and this was only the beginning. Emperor Zethkar sat on his golden throne in the great palace on Valorian Prime. His clawed hands gripped the armrests as he watched the recording from Admiral Kethris for the 10th time. The destruction of the fleet played out on the massive screen before him. 13 powerful warships reduced to scrap metal by one human vessel. "This is impossible," he said to his council of advisors. "Humans are miners and laborers. They have no technology, no weapons, no ships. How could they destroy our fleet?" General Vorthok, the Empire's military commander, stood at attention beside the throne. His scarred face showed both anger and confusion. "My Emperor, perhaps these are not the same humans we use for labor. Maybe this is a different species that looks similar." "No," said Intelligence Director Sinel, studying her datapad. "The genetic scans confirm it. The captain of that ship is definitely human. Same DNA, same physical structure as our workers. But somehow they have technology far beyond anything in our databases." The Emperor stood up, his tall form casting shadows across the throne room. For 3,000 years, his family had ruled the galaxy. No enemy had ever defeated a Valorian fleet so completely. It was humiliating. "Mobilize the Grand Fleet," he commanded. "I want every warship in the Empire assembled. 10,000 vessels will crush these humans and show the galaxy what happens when inferior species challenge us." Admiral Drektos, the head of the Naval Command, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, it will take 3 weeks to gather ships from all sectors. But with 10,000 vessels, we can destroy any force these humans can field." Emperor Zethkar nodded. "Do it, and send a message to all governors. I want every human slave captured and questioned. Find out where they came from and how many more of them exist." But as the orders went out across the Empire, something strange began to happen. Ships that should have responded to the mobilization call went silent. Space stations stopped sending their regular reports. Mining operations suddenly had equipment failures. The first major incident happened at the Kethmori shipyards. where the Empire built its largest warships. The massive construction facility orbited a gas giant and employed 50,000 workers from a dozen different species. It had been building ships for 400 years without any problems. Shipyard. Commander Rexval was reviewing production reports when his communications officer burst into his office. "Sir, we have a problem." "A big problem? What kind of problem?" "There is a ship approaching the shipyard." It appeared out of nowhere, just like in Admiral Cathris' report. Rexval ran to the command center and looked at the main display. A sleek ship with the same dark design was moving slowly toward the shipyard. It was much smaller than the vessel that had destroyed the fleet, but it still looked dangerous. "All defensive platforms, open fire," he ordered. The shipyard's weapons began shooting at the human ship. Plasma cannons and missile launchers fired everything they had. But just like before, the energy weapons simply disappeared into the ship's hull. The missiles exploded harmlessly against some kind of invisible barrier. The human ship did not return fire immediately. Instead, it broadcast a message on all frequencies. "Workers of the Kethmori shipyards, your forced labor ends today. You are free to leave." "What do they mean, forced labor?" Rexval demanded. "All workers here are paid employees." But then something impossible happened. Explosions began occurring throughout the shipyard. Not random explosions, but carefully planned ones that destroyed only the most important systems. The main power generators shut down. The artificial gravity failed in the construction areas. The computer networks that controlled everything went offline. "Sir, the explosions are coming from inside the facility," the security chief reported. "Someone has planted bombs in all our critical systems." "That is impossible. Security sweeps the entire facility every day." But the truth was becoming clear. The human ship had not caused the explosions. Someone inside the shipyard had been waiting for this signal. Someone who had been planning this for a long time. As the lights went out across the shipyard, Rexval heard something that chilled him to his core. The sound of thousands of workers cheering. Alien voices from dozens of species, all celebrating their freedom. He realized that many of his employees had actually been prisoners. Working without pay under threat of violence. The human ship transmitted one more message. "Commander Rexval, your shipyard will not be repaired. Any attempt to restart construction here will be stopped. The Empire's war machine ends today." Similar incidents were happening across the Empire. On Theros 7, a human stealth ship appeared and systematically destroyed every mining operation on the planet. But the explosions were not random. They only hit sites where slaves were forced to work. And somehow the workers had already been moved to safety before the attacks began. On Beta Centauri, the main fleet command center lost all communications with its ships. When technicians tried to fix the problem, they discovered that someone had been secretly changing the computer codes for months. Every ship in the sector was flying blind, unable to coordinate with others or receive orders. Intelligence Director Sinal stood in her war room, surrounded by reports that made no sense. Red markers on her galactic map showed attacks happening simultaneously across hundreds of systems. It should have been impossible for any force to coordinate so many operations. "Director, we are receiving a priority transmission," her aide announced. "It is coming from the human territory." The main screen activated, showing a human in a dark uniform. He was older than the captain who had destroyed Admiral Cathris' fleet, with gray hair and calm eyes. "I am Fleet Admiral Jiang Wei of the Terran Federation Navy. I am speaking directly to Emperor Zethkar and his council." "How did you access our secure communications?" Sinal demanded. The Admiral smiled slightly. "Director Sinal, we have been inside your systems for 20 years. Every communication, every troop movement, every secret plan. We have been watching and waiting." The truth hit her like a physical blow. The equipment failures, the missing ships, the accidents at military bases. That was all you. Every slave transport that disappeared in hyperspace. Every mining operation that had mysterious breakdowns. Every weapons factory that suffered from computer viruses. Yes, that was us. Emperor Zethkar's voice echoed through the chamber. What do you want, human? Admiral Zhang's expression became serious. The end of your empire. The freedom of every enslaved world. Justice for 3,000 years of murder and oppression. You cannot defeat the entire Valorian Empire with a few ships. Your Majesty, look at your status boards. How many ships have responded to your mobilization order? Sinel quickly checked her displays. Her face went pale. My Emperor, only 4,000 ships have reported ready. 6,000 are either missing, damaged, or unable to respond. Admiral Zhang continued. For 50 years, humanity has been preparing for this moment. Every human taken as a slave was actually a volunteer. Every mining world where humans work has been surveyed and mapped. Every Valorian base has been infiltrated by our people. Impossible. Our security would have detected infiltrators. Director, your security systems were designed by a company called Galactic Defense Solutions. The owner is a Valorian named Kexmore, who has been selling information to us for 15 years. Half of your military contractors work for us. Your own equipment has been reporting to human intelligence all this time. The scale of the deception was overwhelming. The mighty Valorian Empire, rulers of 800 worlds, had been completely compromised. Their enemies knew everything about them, while they knew nothing about their enemies. You have been planning this for decades, Emperor Zethkar said quietly. Your empire made one critical mistake. Your Majesty. You assumed that taking humans as slaves would make us weak. Instead, it gave us access to every part of your civilization. Every mine, every factory, every military base. We have been inside your empire since the beginning, waiting for the right moment to strike. What is your demand? Admiral Zhang's voice became hard as steel. There are no demands, no negotiations, no terms of surrender. The Valorian Empire ends now. Every enslaved species will be free. Every conquered world will govern itself. Your reign of terror is finished. The transmission ended, leaving the throne room in silence. Emperor Zethkar looked at his advisors and saw fear in their eyes for the first time in their lives. Outside, across hundreds of worlds, human ships continued their precise attacks. But they were not trying to destroy everything. They were liberating, freeing slaves, destroying weapons, and giving hope to billions of oppressed people. The hunters had become the hunted. The empire that had ruled through fear was now the one that was afraid. Emperor Zethkar stood in his private chambers, looking out at the capital city below. Valorian Prime was the center of the galaxy's greatest empire, home to 50 million citizens. Massive towers reached toward the clouds, and flying vehicles moved between them like rivers of light. This city had never been attacked in 3,000 years. But today, for the first time ever, enemy ships filled the sky above the capital world. The human fleet had arrived during the night. Not thousands of ships like the Emperor had expected, but only 50 vessels. They hung in space above the planet like dark stars, silent and threatening. The massive defense grid around Valorian Prime had fired everything it had at them. Plasma cannons, nuclear missiles, particle beams. All of it had simply disappeared into their hulls. General Vorthek burst into the chamber without knocking, his face showing panic. My Emperor, the situation is hopeless. Our defenses cannot touch them. They have destroyed every orbital weapons platform and space station. What about the ground-based systems? They ignore our shields and armor completely. Their weapons pass through everything like it does not exist. We have lost contact with the Military Command Center, the Spaceport Authority, and the Planetary Defense Headquarters. Through the window, the Emperor could see explosions happening across the city. But these were not random attacks. The humans were targeting only military and government buildings. They were avoiding areas where civilians lived and worked. They could have destroyed the entire city by now, Zethkar said quietly. Why are they holding back? Before the general could answer, every screen in the room activated at once. The face of Captain Sarah Chun appeared, the same human who had destroyed Admiral Kethrista's fleet. Emperor Zethkar, you will come to the Central Plaza in 1 hour. Come alone and unarmed. This ends today. The transmission cut off, leaving the room in silence. The Emperor looked at his advisors, seeing defeat in their eyes. In 3 days, the mighty Valorian Empire had been brought to its knees by an enemy they had never suspected existed. My Emperor, it is obviously a trap, General Vorthik said. You cannot go. What choice do I have? They have already won. An hour later, Emperor Zethkar walked through the empty streets of his capital. His royal guards had insisted on coming with him, but human ships overhead had made it clear that he must come alone. For the first time in his life, he moved through his own city without protection. The Central Plaza was enormous, designed to hold millions of people during imperial celebrations. Today it was empty except for a single human ship that had landed in the center. The vessel was smaller than the warships overhead, but still impressive. Its dark hull reflected the afternoon sun like black glass. Captain Chun stood at the bottom of the ship's boarding ramp. She was not wearing armor or carrying weapons, just a simple military uniform. Behind her stood 2 other humans, also unarmed. The Emperor was surprised by how normal they looked. Just ordinary people who happened to command the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. Your Majesty, Captain Chun said with a slight nod. Not a bow, just acknowledgement. I am here as you demanded. What do you want? To show you something. Please, come aboard. Zethkar hesitated. Once inside their ship, he would be completely at their mercy. But he had no real choice. His empire was already defeated, that the inside of the human ship was unlike any vessel he had ever seen. The walls seemed to be made of some kind of living metal that shifted and moved slightly. Lights appeared wherever they needed them, as if the ship could read their thoughts. Everything was clean and efficient, but also somehow alive. Captain Chen led him to a large room with windows that showed the city outside. In the center was a holographic display that activated as they approached. Emperor, I want to tell you a story, she said, about humanity's real history. The hologram showed a planet with blue oceans and green continents. It looked peaceful and beautiful. This was Earth, our original homeworld. 400 years ago, we were much like you describe us now. Primitive, divided, fighting among ourselves. We had just begun to explore space when they arrived. The image changed to show massive alien ships appearing in Earth's sky. They looked different from Valorian vessels, but carried the same aura of power and menace. They called themselves the Hegemony. They had ruled their part of the galaxy for 2,000 years, conquering and enslaving hundreds of species. They saw humanity as just another primitive race to add to their empire. The Emperor watched as the hologram showed the invasion of Earth, cities burning, humans fleeing, resistance fighters making desperate last stands against impossible odds. The war lasted 10 years. We fought with everything we had, but we were children fighting giants. In the end, Earth fell. 5 billion humans were killed. The survivors were scattered across the galaxy as slaves and laborers. Zethkar found himself feeling uncomfortable as he watched the destruction. It reminded him too much of Valorian conquest campaigns he had seen celebrated in his own palace. But something unexpected happened, Captain Chun continued. Being enslaved taught us things we never could have learned on our own. We saw advanced technology, studied alien sciences, learned about galactic politics. Most importantly, we learned how empires really work. The hologram showed human slaves working in mines, factories, and construction sites across dozens of worlds. But it also showed them secretly communicating, sharing information, planning. After 50 years of slavery, we escaped. Not just a few of us, but hundreds of thousands, all at once. We had spent decades preparing, building hidden ships, stockpiling supplies, mapping escape routes. How did the hegemony respond? The emperor asked, though he suspected he already knew. They hunted us for another 50 years. Sent fleets to destroy our hidden colonies. Killed any species that helped us. But we had learned their weaknesses. We knew how they thought, how they planned, how they fought. The hologram showed space battles between human ships and hegemony fleets. But these were not the one-sided victories the emperor had expected. The humans were winning. It took us 100 years to completely destroy the hegemony. Not because we enjoyed killing, but because they would never stop hunting us. They could not accept that their slaves had become their equals. Captain Chen looked directly at the emperor. When the last hegemony ship was destroyed, we made a promise. Never again would any species be enslaved. Never again would empires be allowed to grow through conquest and oppression. And that is why you came for us. Your empire has enslaved 43 different species. You have strip-mined 200 worlds to lifelessness. You have murdered billions in the name of expansion. By our calculations, you are responsible for more suffering than even the hegemony caused. The emperor felt something he had never experienced before: shame. When seen from the outside, his great empire looked no different from any other group of murderers and thieves. What happens now? He asked. Every enslaved species will be freed immediately. Every conquered world will be given the chance to govern itself. The Valorian military will be disbanded. Your weapons factories will be converted to produce tools for rebuilding instead of instruments of war. And the Valorian people? Captain Chen's expression softened slightly. They will be free to build a new society based on cooperation instead of domination. We have no interest in genocide or revenge. We want to break the cycle, not continue it. Many will resist. They've been raised to believe in Valorian superiority. Some will, yes. But we have learned that most people, even in empires, are not truly evil. They are afraid, or misinformed, or have never been given a choice. Once they see there is another way to live, many will choose it. Through the window, they could see human ships landing throughout the city. Not invasion craft, but transports carrying food, medicine, and aid workers. The same species that had just defeated the greatest empire in the galaxy was now helping its former enemies. You could have just destroyed everything, the emperor said quietly. It would have been easier. Yes, it would have been easier. But we learned something important during our own enslavement. Every empire believes it is bringing order to chaos. Every conqueror thinks they are saving the galaxy from itself. If we had simply conquered the galaxy in your place, we would have become the same thing we fought against. Captain Chen walked to the window and looked out at the city. Emperor, your people are not inherently evil. They have been raised in a system that rewards cruelty and punishes compassion. Given the chance, most of them will choose to be better. How can you be so sure? Because we have done this before. 12 other empires over the past 2 centuries. Each time, we thought it would be impossible to change an entire civilization. Each time, we were surprised by how quickly most people adapted to freedom. The emperor stood in silence for a long moment, processing everything he had heard. His entire worldview was crashing down around him, but strangely, he did not feel despair. For the first time in his life, he felt something that might have been hope. What do you want me to do? Help us. Use your authority to make the transition as peaceful as possible. Show your people that cooperation brings more benefits than conquest ever could. Outside, the sun was setting over Valorian Prime, but for the first time in 3,000 years, it was setting on a world that was free. Captain Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of her new ship. But this vessel was very different from the warship that had ended the Valorian Empire 6 months ago. The second chance was a hospital ship, designed to heal instead of destroy. Its hull was white instead of dark gray, and instead of weapons, it carried medical equipment, supplies, and hoped out through the viewing windows. She could see the planet Kepler-4, 4-2b below. This was one of the worlds where humans had worked as slaves in the mines. Now it was becoming something entirely different. The mining equipment had been replaced with farms and schools. The prison camps had become cities where different alien species lived together in peace. "Captain, we are receiving a transmission from the surface," said Lieutenant Torres, her communications officer. Torres was human, but her assistant was a young Valorian who had volunteered to serve on the medical ship. 6 months ago, such cooperation would have been impossible. "Put it on screen," Chun said. The display showed a familiar face, former Emperor Zethkar. But he looked very different now. Instead of royal robes, he wore simple work clothes. His face, which had once shown only arrogance and cruelty, now looked tired but peaceful. "Captain Chun, the construction of the new hospital is ahead of schedule. The Valorian engineering teams and the Kalari medical staff are working together better than we expected." Chun smiled. The Kalari were one of the species that have been enslaved by the Empire for over a century. Seeing them work alongside former Valorians was a small miracle. "That is excellent news, Zethkar. How are the former soldiers adapting to civilian life?" The ex-emperor paused. "It is difficult for many of them. They were taught that their value came from their ability to conquer and control, learning to find purpose in building and healing instead. It takes time, but they are learning? Yes, slowly, but yes. Yesterday, I saw a former admiral teaching Kalari children how to read. 2 weeks ago, he would have considered them animals. Now he says they are the smartest students he has ever had." Chun nodded. This was the hardest part of rebuilding a civilization, changing how people thought about themselves and others. Destroying the Valorian fleet had taken days. Changing Valorian minds was taking months and would probably take years. Any problems we should know about? There was an incident yesterday. A group of former officers tried to restart a weapons factory in the northern continent. They claimed they were preparing to defend the planet against invasion. How did the local authorities handle it? Zethkar actually smiled slightly. They did not need to. The factory workers themselves refused to cooperate. They said they had seen enough war and wanted to build farming equipment instead. The former officers gave up and joined a project to clean contaminated water supplies. This was the best news Chun had heard all week. When the people themselves rejected violence, real change was happening. A new voice joined the conversation. "Captain Chun, this is Dr. Velanara speaking." The screen split to show a Kalari doctor wearing the same medical uniform as the human staff. Dr. Velanara had been a slave for 30 years before the liberation. Now she was the head of xenobiology research for the entire sector. "Doctor, how are the medical exchanges going?" "Remarkably well. Human medical technology combined with Kalari biological knowledge and Valorian engineering skills has created treatments we never thought possible. We have cured diseases that have plagued my people for generations." Chun felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with victory in battle. This was what they had been fighting for. Not conquest, but cooperation. Not dominance, but partnership. "Captain, we have another transmission coming in," Lieutenant Torres announced. "It is from Admiral Zhang." "It is from Admiral Zhang," The screen changed to show Fleet Admiral Jiang Wei in his command center. Behind him, Chun could see officers from a dozen different species working together at various stations. The Terran Federation Navy was no longer just human. "Sarah, I wanted to give you an update on the galactic situation," Admiral Jiang said. "The last Valorian holdout systems have agreed to join the new Cooperative Council. General Vorthik has agreed to lead the transition on Valorian Prime." "Vorthik is cooperating?" Chun asked with surprise. The former general had been one of the most loyal supporters of the old empire. He fought the changes for months, but something convinced him to try a different approach. Yesterday, he sent a message saying that he had never seen Valorian citizens as happy as they are now that they are free to choose their own paths. Chun was not entirely surprised. Many of the former Valorian leaders had discovered that ruling through fear was much harder than governing through consent. When people were free to leave, leaders had to actually earn their loyalty. "What about the other empires?" she asked. Admiral Jiang's expression became more serious. "Our long-range scouts have detected 3 other major powers that use slavery and conquest. The Hikari Dominion, the Synthetic Collective, and something called the Eternal Hierarchy. They are all watching what happened to the Valorians. Are they preparing to attack us?" 2 of them are. The Hikari are building a massive fleet and making alliances with smaller aggressive species. The Synthetic Collective has begun upgrading their war machines. But the Eternal Hierarchy has done something unexpected. "What?" "They sent an ambassador. A formal diplomatic mission asking to meet with representatives of the Terran Federation and the new Cooperative Council. They want to discuss peaceful coexistence." Chum felt a spark of hope. Someone learned the lesson without having to be taught it the hard way. It seems so. The ambassador arrives next week. Emperor Zethkar has volunteered to be part of the diplomatic team, along with representatives from all the liberated species. The irony was beautiful. The former ruler of a conquest empire would now be working to prevent other species from making the same mistakes his people had made. "Admiral, what is our fleet status?" 40% of our ships have been converted to medical, research, or construction vessels like yours. The remaining 60% are ready for military action if needed. But I hope we never have to use them. Through the viewing window, Chun watched shuttles flying between the Second Chance and the planet below. Each shuttle carried doctors, teachers, engineers, and supplies. Some of the shuttles were piloted by humans, others by former Valorians, and still others by species that had been enslaved for generations. They were all working toward the same goal now. "Captain, we have a young visitor who wants to speak with you," Lieutenant Torres announced. A small figure appeared on screen, a Kellari child, probably 8 or 9 years old. Her large eyes sparkled with excitement and intelligence. "Captain Chun, my name is Kiranel. I wanted to thank you for freeing my family from the mines." Chun knelt down so she would be at eye level with the child on the screen. "You are very welcome, Kiranel. What are you doing now that you are free?" "I am learning to read. And I am studying medicine so I can help people like Dr. Velanara does. My teacher says I am very smart and that I can become anything I want." "That sounds wonderful. What do you want to become?" The child thought seriously for a moment. "I want to be a captain like you, but not on a warship. I want to captain a ship that explores new worlds and makes friends with new people." Chun felt tears forming in her eyes. This child, who had been born into slavery, now dreamed of exploring the stars and making friends instead of conquerors. "I think you will make an excellent captain, Kiranel." After the transmission ended, Chun stood quietly on her bridge, thinking about everything that had changed. 6 months ago, she had been preparing for war. Today, she was helping to build a new kind of galactic civilization. Lieutenant Torres approached with a datapad. Captain, we have received a priority message from Earth. It is being broadcast on all human frequencies across the galaxy. What does it say? It is an invitation, Captain. Earth is hosting the first Galactic Cooperation Summit next year. Every liberated species, every former Empire member, and every independent world is invited to attend. The goal is to create formal agreements for trade, mutual defense, and shared exploration. Chun looked out at the stars and imagined a galaxy where exploration replaced conquest, where trade replaced tribute, and where cooperation replaced domination. Torres, send a reply. Tell them the second chance will definitely attend. As her ship continued its mission of healing and rebuilding, Captain Sarah Chun thought about the message humanity was sending to the rest of the galaxy. It was not a warning or a threat, but an invitation. An invitation to something new. The message was simple. The age of conquest is over. The age of cooperation has begun. Choose wisely, and across the galaxy, more and more species were making that choice. Not because they were forced to, but because they finally could see there was a better way. The Empire was gone. In its place, something beautiful was growing. Something that had never existed before in galactic history. A civilization based on freedom, cooperation, and hope. The humans had kept their promise. They had broken the cycle. And now, together with their new friends and former enemies, they were building something better than any empire could ever be.